to now hand over to the Secretary General to come and present to you our statement on the outcomes of the 2 days Lekgotla. Over to you, SG.
Thank you. Well, thanks, Comrade Pule, and let me say thanks to the media for coming today. I'm just going to read our statement, and I'm sure, as usual, you will pose questions to the panel here. This is the statement of the African National Congress following the NEC Lekgotla, held from the 30th to the 31st of July 2018. The National Executive Committee of the ANC held its mid-year Lekgotla from the 30th to the 31st of July 2018 at St. George's Hotel, Irene Tshwane, and the Lekgotla was preceded by a very successful induction workshop held on the 29th of July 2018. The NEC of the ANC continuously induct its members as part of ongoing effort of strengthening the integrity of the ANC and its role in society, and keeping abreast with development in society, including sharing best practices from other revolutionary parties. And the ANC dedicated the day to this objective, and all of us are revived and re-energized. And the Lekgotla was attended by members of the NEC, the leagues, representative of our alliance partners, and other mass democratic movement formations, as well as cadres deployed in government. And the midterm Lekgotla affords the ANC an opportunity to assess progress made by government in the implementation of the resolutions taken and commitments made in the January 8 statements. It further seeks to measure impact government's program of action on society. And the Lekgotla received a very intensive political overview from the President, which emphasized the importance of a united, cohesive, and activist ANC, rooted amongst the people as a reliable instrument to grow the economy, reduce poverty and economy. The Lekgotla further received a presentation on the capacity and performance of state. And with less than 10 months left before the end of the current term of government, the Lekgotla undertook a review of the implementation of the 2014 election manifesto, persistent challenges and priorities towards the development of the 2019 ANC election manifesto. And importantly, Lekgotla directed that implications and impact of our program on youth and women must be located as the central focus. Young people need jobs and opportunities, but they also represent an enormous, largely untapped resource for the economy and society. As we indicated in the 2018 January 8 statement, one of the central tasks of the ANC for this year is to forge a social pact between government, labor, business, and communities to reignite economic growth and create an enabling environment for job creation. And on statecraft and transformation, Lekgotla accepted that the challenges in the state identified by different studies are not insurmountable, and they require the following broad interventions. The need to strengthen the capacity of local government, both technically and politically, so we can improve service delivery. Improve stability of the administrative leadership, enforcement of accountability and authority, improvements in organizational designs, effective use of financial expenditure of the state, and dealing decisively with corruption in the public as well as private sector. In a highly unequal society such as South Africa, the most critical aspect of an effective state is its redistributive capacity. And the democratic government has to be able to translate conflicting societal demands into a single implemented public policy. The state has to intervene in unusual ways to correct historical inequalities and generate opportunities for its citizens and gain broad public support for doing so, as the ANC has been doing, ANC government. And in addressing state performance and public service effectiveness, the Lekgotla identified issues requiring our attention and focus. One, capacity of the state, because this is the strategic capacity of the state will be increased with the introduction and training of all senior management to effect integrated national planning systems that are evidence-based and are comfortable with statistics. We must ensure that legislative gaps required to implement constitutional principles are also filled. And on the issue of institutional capacity, reviewing the current institutional configuration of public administration is critical in renewed efforts to improve the functioning of the state and public service. And the current configuration impedes integration and coordination in planning and delivery, as well as unity and consistency of purpose in public service. Technical capacity, the frequently reported concerns around shortage of technical and managerial skills within the public service and the outsourcing of professional and technical services is a challenge that requires our attention. And the National Development Plan advocates for a graduate recruitment and training program to source top talent directly from universities and set individuals on a planned path of career development and training. And on organizational culture, given South Africa's deep-seated socio-economic ills, the public service cannot be effective unless it is imbued with a strong and self-conscious developmental ethos. On economic growth, land reform and job creation, the Lekgotla considered a number of inputs and discussed interventions in the short and medium term to accelerate inclusive growth and investment, create an enabling environment for a job creation on a large scale, and implement the ANC policies on land reform. And in this regard, Lekgotla developed a number of concrete proposals to address the key metrics of economic performance and social inclusion. And therefore, Lekgotla called for a better alignment between the three spheres of government, with national government playing the leadership role because South Africa is a unitary state. Macroeconomic policy instruments and microeconomic interventions to ensure that jobs and inclusive growth is actively pursued. The Lekgotla emerged with a broad range of tasks that will be consolidated into a program of action with clear deliverables and time frames. And in terms of renewing our bond with the people, between now and the end of the year, every leader, cadre, and employee of the movement needs to be on the ground at every opportunity to listen to the people's concern, and most importantly, we need to fix their problems. That's why we have embarked on the Thoma Mina campaign. We need to be exemplary in our conduct as leaders and cadres, and we must do anything that will bring our movement or government. We shouldn't do anything that will bring our movement and government into disrepute, of which would cast doubt on our commitment to clean governance. And that's why the issues of integrity we have seriously discussed. Develop and implement a stimulus package to ignite growth and create jobs. I'm sure the President last night talked about this package. The ANC reflected at length on the prevailing economic situation. It further engaged on the latest quarterly labor force survey and reiterated its concern on the increase in the unemployment rate. It is only through greater numbers of people in productive employment that we may build the economy, provide livelihoods to our people, meet national development objectives, and industrialize South Africa. And the Commission recognized that while 2.7 million new jobs have been created since 2010, the level of unemployment has also grown in this period and is now the overriding challenge of the movement to address. And we need to unlock both domestic and foreign investment. As a country, we must prioritize measures in the immediate and medium term that will restore investor confidence and make South Africa a more attractive investment destination. And Lekgotla has directed government to develop and implement a broader stimulus package for jobs and economic growth, focusing on young people and women, particularly in the townships and rural communities. And this is what the President will elaborate immediately after the government Lekgotla. Comprising, amongst others, increased investment in public infrastructure, stepping up resources for entrepreneurship and employment opportunities for youth and women, including through small and medium business support, agricultural support packages for farmers in depressed areas to be initiated before the first rains come this year to boost economic growth and food security, more investment in energy security, including in oil, gas, and power generation. Focusing procurement on localization, drawing in retailers, private businesses, and public sector to support South African producers, and training for unemployed young South Africans with the skills necessary to compete in the fourth industrial revolution. In terms of restoring the credibility, integrity, and effectiveness of the state, we have said government must address weaknesses in governance, financial management, and service provision, especially in local government. And priority will therefore be given to basic services like water, sanitation, and electricity, and fixing roads and potholes through alignment of plans of service departments on an agent basis. And our special focus must be placed on critical frontline services such as health, education, and social development. And therefore our government must deal decisively with the conflict that often arises between national and provincial governments in the exercise of concurrent powers, particularly where service provision is compromised. We have already emphasized this point that South Africa is a unitary state, and therefore there is one country. No department must use the Constitution to avoid accountability for its failure to meet people's needs. And government must therefore overhaul planning systems, improve monitoring capacity across all three levels of government to intervene and deal with service delivery failures. It must work with greater agency and purpose to stabilize the finances and operations of state-owned enterprises, especially Eskom, Transnet, Denel, and Prasa. And on the last issue, the amendment of the Constitution to explicitly provide for expropriation of land without compensation and begin implementation. This is the 54th National Conference resolution, and we have been working on it. The Lekgotla reflected on the implementation plan for the wide-ranging resolution on land and agrarian reform adopted at the 54th National Conference, as well as the views of our people expressed in our own engagements in villages, towns, and cities, and at the public hearing throughout the country. The ANC has applauded our people drawn from all walks of life for their strong and active participation in the public forum and for expressing their views on this critical matter. And you can then see this is constitutional democracy that we fought for. And the public hearings have confirmed our view that overwhelming our people would want the constitutional provisions to be less restrictive and more explicit about expropriation of land without compensation. The ANC also believes that a land reform program that provides equitable access to land will unlock economic growth, bring unused or purely used land assets to full use, enable the productive participation of millions more South Africans in the economy. And that's why we are applauding our public hearings, and we have seen overwhelmingly our people are saying we should actually amend the Constitution. So we are part of that voice, and the public hearings will be coming to an end. We will be watching that space, and I think the ANC is participating in these public hearings. Accordingly, as stated by the President of the ANC will, through the parliamentary process, finalize a proposed amendment to the Constitution that outlines more clearly the conditions under which expropriation of land without compensation can be effected in order to promote redress and also promote economic development, agricultural production and food security, and transform the unjust spatial realities in urban areas. The Lekgotla emphasized the fact that government must never allow any land grabs. Lekgotla also mandated government to draft various legislation that will detail how land will be expropriated and distributed to the people. And the ANC recognizes and will continue to promote a range of land ownership forms, being public, private, cooperative, family, and communal. And the African National Congress today also wish to acknowledge the African National Congress Women's League efforts and Young Women's Desk. Today they are holding nationwide marches against the scourge of gender-based violence and femicide overwhelming throughout the country. We encourage societies and all men throughout South Africa to support all these initiatives and observe the planned moment of silence as we do today. Thank you very much. I'm sure we are going to allow you to pose questions, and the panel is here to respond to you.
Thank you very much, Secretary General. The moment of silence that is planned by the ANC Women's League Young Women's Desk is at 1 o'clock today. I'm sure all of us are going to observe that moment. We can now open the floor for questions. Everybody. Samkelo. Klazi. Smell. You'll just introduce yourself and the media outlets you come from to make it easier for us.
Okay, my name is Dio Sagata from Independent.
Yes.
My first question is, you are saying the ANC is part of that voice. I mean, talking about the issue of land hearings. Are you saying it's part of that voice within the context of contributing? Or are you saying it's part of the voice which says the constitution must actually be amended? Even though the president did speak yesterday, but he was talking about both the views that are expressed that the constitution can be able to enable professional compensation, even if it's not amended. But people are also saying it must be amended to provide clarity and do away with ambiguity. What is the ANC saying actually? Are you saying now, since you have benefited of what people are saying, you are also supporting that the constitution must be amended? Can you explicitly say what are you actually saying? Secondly, you have expressed what the president expressed last night. Why was there rush for the president to say instead what you are saying now? What is the difference? Why did he have to specifically talk about the issue of stimulus package and the issue of land redistribution and expropriation separated from what you have just said? What was their decision by the ANC Lekgotla? What was the reason behind it? Thank you.
Samkelo.
Samkelo myself with ANC. The question will be directed to the chair of the Economic Transformation in Lekgotla and Ronald. Are you now ditching testing the current Constitution, Section 25, at the Court, whether it enables the government of the day to expropriate land without compensation? Because if I remember correctly, it was Enoch and Ronald Lamula after the ANC's land summit at Birchwood Hotel. They said that the ANC would both continue with the parliamentary process that is currently ongoing with the land engagements currently taking place in all 9 provinces, and also test Section 25 at the Court, whether it allows and permits for land expropriation without compensation. We're now ditching that and going straight for amending Section 25 of the Constitution. And lastly, have we engaged the economic freedom fighters on this issue of amending Section 25? Because they were willing to give you their votes last year, if I'm not mistaken, and you rejected it. Have you had any engagement with them in the past week over this development that has again happened over the weekend in the ANC? Thank you.
Okay, Klasse.
Thank you, Mahlasa from News 24. I'll be a little bit more specific by adding on to what my colleagues have said. Is the ANC supporting the current proposal by the EFA for all land to be owned by the state, or you actually want a different model? If you could perhaps explain to us. And then, obviously, the statement yesterday and what you're saying today, you're saying that the current constitution does allow for expropriation of land without compensation in the public interest. What more, how much more explicit would you want it to be? If you can give us an indication of what the wording would then be of that amendment. Obviously, you've seen, following that statement, the land had also suffered, and then you've also been accused of undermining the parliamentary process that is currently underway. So perhaps if you could give us an indication of what the wording would actually say, to be more explicit than what we have now, and to who should actually own the land.
Okay, there was a hand there. Yes.
On the land issue, and as well as the announcement by the President last night, why so early to be held last night. The second question is perhaps for Minister Lekgotla with regard to statecraft and reconfiguring the government and the cabinet. How far is that work? What is the progress on it? It was announced by the President in his State of the Nation address. And how is the ANC planning on addressing the interface between politicians and administrators? Because that has been a repeated problem throughout the years. So how are you going to address that problem in order to professionalize the public service? Thanks.
CNBC.
CNBC Africa. I too would like to reiterate what some of my colleagues have asked with regards to when the move occurred, if you will, from the government can expropriate without compensation, and we're going to try the diversity of it to where we are now. And explicitly, I too, like my colleagues, would like a position of that. And I would like to potentially direct this question to Mr. Lamola or Mr. Bedongwa. With regards to the economic stimulus package, this year the government announced that it will be taking on free education. It's been a much detailed fact that we are short of money. I would like to know where this other money would be coming from within our constraint.
Okay. No, that's fine. Secretary General and the chairs of various commissions can now come and provide the needed clarity. Comrade I'm sure.
Mostly I'm the one on the dock.
And Comrade Ayanda, so there's a specific question that they wanted you to clarify. You'll just come and deal with that as well.
But maybe on the land issue, we need to take you down memory lane. The first thing we agreed on land expropriation without compensation, subject to a number of economic considerations. That was in conference. After that, we had to engage in a series of processes of refining how do we do that exactly. Among other things, in March we had a workshop. The proposals of the workshop were taken to the National Executive. What then was contained in that? The first thing I want to say, we then said the Constitution in its present form does not preclude expropriation without compensation. It does not. And we're saying so in the statement. We're going to come back to that point in a moment. And then we then said we'll have a number of processes that we're going to engage on. Among other things, we said we will test that in a court, the provisions of the court. And secondly, we also put a proviso that we'll have to, in the circumstances, look at tampering with Section 25, subsection 2B. It's contained in our resolution of the National Executive in May. Thirdly, we said the Constitution embodies our democratic values and has got transformative impulses, which we will use the constitutional review process to strengthen and clarify. I want to add that so that you should see the continuation of the discourse. What has happened subsequent to that is that there's been public hearings. We cannot ignore the voices of our people. That's what we're saying in the statement. What the statement then suggests, what we're saying is that in the context of when we're sitting as the Lekgotla, you must understand the next meeting of the National Executive is May. We've got to review the process, what is taking place now. And what in the review, we've said, we have been watching all the public hearings, and we've been meeting people in different places as part of our interaction with the people. And clearly there's an overwhelming view that even if there should be clarity of purpose under which conditions we will do expropriation without compensation. And that is necessary not only for us, for our people, it's necessary for society as a whole, so that we provide clarity on the rules of the game. That's basically what this process is about. Are we trying to undermine the parliamentary process? No, not at all. We are recognizing that process, we're meeting at the tail end of that process. And clearly, the implications of that are suggesting that most of our people favor the route we're taking. And therefore, as a political party, we will contribute, like all other political parties, to this process. That's our contribution to that discourse in Parliament. We're not undermining Parliament. So we've not abandoned the testing. The testing is part of the parallel process. In fact, our resolution, which we're not going to share with the public for now, we've identified some of the areas in which we want to test the provisions of the Constitution. It's part of the discussion we've entertained over the weekend. What are the likely proposals for and these conditions? As part of the refinement processes, that's one part we're going to discuss. And as we announced down the line, we think that there's a shift, whereas internal there's a democratic process to around that particular debate. But personally, I can say there are guidelines offered in the Ready to Govern document in terms of what property or what kind of land we should be looking at. The Ready to Govern document also talks about land held for speculation, land which is not underutilized land, a whole range of processes. That's also going to be part of the guideline of the discourse. I'm not saying that the final exhausted list. Insofar as the stimulus package, we cannot sit when we're discussing what is happening in the economy at the moment. Let me just look, for instance, in one sector which is strategic, which government infrastructure spending impacts on the construction industry. If you use that as your starting point, the construction industry, in the previous quarterly bulletin, not the last one that came last week, showed that industry lost about 107,000 year on year jobs. As we speak, two of the major companies in that industry, Levero and Basel Reed, are under business rescue. They're demonstrating that there's an impact. If that industry suffered, there's a knock-on effect to the other industries. Clearly, the job situation which came out at 11:30 yesterday also suggests that instead of abating, the unemployment situation is becoming worse. As a responsible political governing party, we've got to respond to that. And the stimulus package is part of that, respond to that question. The question is where the money is going to come from. Among other things we've suggested, without undermining fiscal consolidation, clearly we've got to relook at the expenditure composition of that budget. At the expenditure composition of that budget and redirect it, a number of that towards the areas identified for the stimulus package. That's largely how we're going to deal with that question. Have we interacted with the EFF guys? Not as far as I know. Maybe Lamula, that's his generation, he has interacted with them, not me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, colleagues. So we're going to move. Comrade Ayanda is going to come and deal with the reconfiguration. Comrade Zweli will deal with will expand on statecraft and transformation. Comrade Naledi will deal with the NDP and versus the graduate recruitment and training program. Comrade Mamankosa Zana will deal with the capacity and performance of the state, and Comrade Dumo will deal with will expand on SOEs. Diana.
Thank you very much. On the reconfiguration, the macro configuration of the state, Section 7, Section 3(4) of the Public Service Act enjoins the Minister for Public Service and Administration to advise the President regarding the establishment or the abolition of departments, the designation of such departments, and the head thereof, or the amendment to such designation. Work in that regard has begun in the department. We are a long way off with regards to finalizing our work, but that work would also have to go through various steps to ensure that there is quality assurance for purposes of ensuring that there is alignment with all of the stakeholders, and also so that we can be able to effect the interfaces of planning, implementation, and budgeting as we develop, as we present this back to the President. On the interface between politicians and public servants, again, Section 12 also enjoins us to also assist both premiers in provinces and also the President in the deployment of public servants to certain positions. If it is in the case of heads of departments, the appointment and career incidents of all DGs are the prerogative of the President. Same in provinces, that's Section 12(1)(a) and B of the Public Service Act. Same as with the premiers in provinces, they have the sole prerogative for the appointment and career incidents of heads of department. That cannot be done in isolation of the executive authority that exists, but also in conjunction with the Department of Public Service and Administration. Thank you.
No, thank you. I think what we want to add on the issues that were raised by Comrade Ayanda is how to ensure that we have a capable state and a capable developmental state, as we call it, which then takes into account a number of things that need to be put together. I think the first issue here relates to ensuring a professional civil service, a civil service that withstand the changes in the political principles through changes of administration, changes of movement of ministers, so that we can create a degree of stability in the senior leadership on the administration. This will ensure that we have got institutional memory, and it helps us as you look at multi-year planning cycles and looking at longer-term planning. For example, if you are talking about NDP that talks about 2030, then those who are in the administration must have a sense of planning that will span over that period, as well as some of the immediate decisions that have just been taken recently whilst they were within the administration. This creates a stable environment in terms of the administration, and we see this not only at the national level, where there's a rapid turnover rate of senior officials, sometimes associated with the changing of ministerial appointments. We also see the same in the municipalities, where the term of office of municipal managers ends just after the new council has been inaugurated, and that has created a degree of instability which results in the audit outcomes that we see. So after the first election, after the election of the municipalities, then you see that the deteriorating outcomes, and later there's improvement that is really as a result of the fact that there are changes. So lots of capacity building goes in, and then later on with the changes that tends to affect them. So these are some of the issues, therefore, that had to be looked at. And the second aspect relates to the depth of skills within the administration, balance between managerial skills and technical skills. And this becomes an issue that has to be monitored and worked on very closely. In addition, there's a role that has to be played by the National School of Governance in building the capacity and also focusing on the specific areas of need that will help us to stabilize the government service delivery processes. So there's a focus that's been raised here around evidence-based planning, which means that all the senior managers need to have very intensive training in that regard, so that what you look at with the outcomes that come from Statistics South Africa, that all gets used and incorporated both for planning as well as for monitoring of the impact of government on service delivery programs onto society. So we had quite a lot of discussion at that kind of level. So when we look at the issues of planning, we believe that it's important also to say there must be strong capacity of planning at the presidency's level, wherein then we ensure that there is integration both at a vertical as well as a horizontal level, integration and alignment of programs within different departments, as well as also alignment from province to national to province and to municipalities. Right now, we have actually been we're going to be looking at pulling a number of departments to close these gaps of misalignments. And there are instances where you have had reports of bulk services available, reticulation not available, that need to be aligned. And all of this is a function of alignment of planning and spatial planning as we try and improve on service delivery. So the issue of training becomes a major issue. So overall, when we talk about the statecraft and transformation, we're looking at a state that is capable both in terms of the managerial technical skills, but also in terms of the structures that it has that have to be, modeled to be able to offer effective service delivery across different spheres, and of course ensuring that the systems of government also are improved at that kind of level. That has been the kind of discussion that we've had to go into. So when we talk about now dealing with the issues of service delivery that the Secretary General talks about, we have to target various departments to ensure that all their budgets are aligned to a special program that goes on areas and completes services in areas where the plans were actually disjointed. All of this has to be taken on a priority level, and of course must then be institutionalized into a longer-term planning program. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, SG. Before I before I refer to the graduate recruitment program as discussed at the Lekgotla, I just wish to set the record straight with respect to the National Student Financial Aid Scheme. Firstly, there's no shambles or crisis at the National Student Financial Aid Scheme. However, there are matters of administration of bursaries to applicants that must be concluded for the year 2018 and the academic year 2017. And until I'm assured that those processes are properly concluded, we cannot open, because once you open applications, we defocus from 2017 and 2018 and then have a situation where institutions are owed money, students are not receiving their allowances. So we're just ensuring that we get all these processes properly concluded. We've been working very closely with the Student Financial Aid Scheme. We've got allowances out, tuition is being paid, but there are a number of areas in which I'm not satisfied. And so it is for that reason that I've said hold off for a while with respect to opening up applications for 2019. But there's no crisis and there's no shambles. I just wanted to make that clear. Then the second matter is Lekgotla expressed concern with the degree to which in our educational programs we are responding fully to the diagnostic analysis that had been included in the National Development Plan. You would recall that particularly with respect to basic education, a number of concerns were indicated in the diagnostic analysis, and again in those domains that are called critical skills areas, your engineers, doctors, the basic science graduates, that we're not producing the numbers and quality that is required. But a third aspect was an indication in the NDP that many young graduates find it very difficult to find a space in the economy or indeed in the public service. So we agreed that we actually need to look again at a properly designed graduate recruitment program, which would involve not just the public service, but would also include organs of civil society. We have large NGOs in the country which do have some absorption capacity, and with a proper arrangement, you actually could find many more places where young graduates would gain experience, have the opportunity of working, and actually becoming a contributor to their own livelihood. So we said we recognize the efforts that have been made by government with respect to internship programs, but we believe we need a far more carefully designed program that would actually ensure that we get a range of institutions participating in graduate placement and offering real work experience to young people. So this is in response to the NDP's concern about the need to ensure that the young people that emerge from our post-school system actually are able to earn a livelihood, to acquire work experience skills, and then to proceed to whatever domain they may want. And we've not really fully addressed the complementarities that a range of different institutions could bring into play in ensuring young people have greater work opportunities. So that is the mandate that we've been assigned to look into by the Lekgotla. Thank you very much, Comrade SG.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, SG. I'm just going to speak a bit more on the improving the capacity of the state. One of the things that was identified is that the ANC makes policies and strategic direction of where the country should go, where government should go. But in the state, we need to improve the capacity to take that policy and plan properly and implement it. Because sometimes changing that policy into an implementation plan takes so long, or sometimes doesn't happen properly, and therefore the implementation does not happen at the pace that we would like it to happen. And secondly, we need to improve the integrated planning, because at the moment there is very the planning is very decentralized. You find different plans at the national, at the provincial, at the local government that don't really speak to where the country as a whole should go. So that integrated planning is very important. But it's not only at the three spheres of government, but even within government, we need to coordinate and integrate, because sometimes at government level, we work as though we're a federation of departments rather than just one government. So it's very important to improve that capacity at government. The technical skills are also very important, because Because what we find is that the technical skills to implement the government plans sometimes are lacking at all spheres. And then what happens? We have to now pay consultants to come and do the work that should be done by people inside the department. And also, then you find that sometimes we have to form agencies and outsource what actually could be done by government if the technical skills were sufficiently there. So that's another area that we need to improve so that the capacity of the state is optimized. But also at the monitoring and evaluation, we need to strengthen that. Not only to monitor at the national level, but at all levels, at the provincial level and at the local government level. Some of the areas that our people protest about is things that if we had monitored them properly earlier, probably could have been fixed before they cause protests, and especially at local government level, but at all levels. But local government is very important because that's where our people interact with government on an hourly basis or minute-to-minute basis. So that capacity is very important, and the monitoring of what is going on there. Because sometimes we take the spheres of government as though they mean that each province is a state on its own, whereas we are a unitary state, and the three spheres of government distinct but interrelated and interdependent according to the Constitution. Therefore, national cannot abdicate its responsibility when things are not going right. So we should be monitoring, working together in an interdependent way. So those are some of the aspects that we discussed as far as improving the capacity of the state. And the monitoring, therefore, has to be at national, but also in all spheres. But we have also agreed that we should also monitor the SOEs, because at the moment, the SOEs were not part of the monitoring and evaluation. But government, the ANC, has said the SOEs must also be monitored. But therefore, it means even the capacity of monitoring and evaluation should be strengthened so that we could be able to monitor all these areas that need to be monitored. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Comrade SG. Indeed, in keeping with the statement just made here in us being a unitary state, the SOEs, as the Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma has just said it, the work has already begun. You are aware of that. To assist, to intervene, to work hard to root out the challenges that have been identified in a number of our SOEs, so that indeed we are in keeping with our resolve to building a capable developmental state, even in our SOEs. So the work indeed is continuing to root out corruption, to assist the streamlining of their performance, because we expect the SOEs to make their own contribution towards skills development. It's one aspect, but also those specific deliverables. There is indeed a need to look deeper on what needs to be done in a number of them, and that will be unpacked as we're going to be in the government Lekgotla soon, because the need to change there has been indeed identified. There shall be consultations with a range of stakeholders, including labor, on the conversations that must happen to assist our SOEs. Issues around what types of boards and what skills are necessary. We're indeed paying a particular attention to that aspect so that we have relevant skills and skilled people to manage the workforce that works there, relevant to the tasks, the boards. So it's going to be indeed the thing of the past going forward, that you would have colleagues there who are appointed purely on the basis of other things other than what is expected of the job. Our government is going to be dealing with that. But the point I wanted to emphasize is that the work there has started. Things are moving. We can talk about ESCOM, DENEL, and a range of other entities. It will be happening in consultation with the relevant stakeholders, because the reality is that drastic interventions must really be unfolding, and that work has started to happen there. I just wanted to highlight that area in expanding on what already stated here.
Thank you very much, SG. I was protesting to Comrade Pule that how can I wear a suit and not be allowed to speak here. Thank you very much. I think I will answer some few questions. One, Mahlatsi asked the forms of ownership that we want to have, and the outcomes of the National Executive Committee and the workshop. You will remember at the workshop outcomes, we were very clear that we are going to use the constitutional review process to clarify and to use it to be more explicit. And I think now is the tail end. That's why we're saying our members across the country. I've attended some of the hearings in Bombela, in Mpumalanga, in Limpopo, Mabel Hall, in Vryheid, in KZN, and in Umtata, in the Eastern Cape. It is very clear our members were also briefed. You will have seen their participation. They were supporting the amendment, and they were also very clear that the land must be redistributed to the people. The land must be redistributed to the people. So it means that we are going to take it and give it to those who are going to use it. We are going to give them title deeds. If we are giving you a farm, we are going to give you a title deed to that farm. If we are giving you a house, for instance, the RDP houses, we are giving them title deeds. So we are not nationalizing the land of this country. Because if we do that, it means we are also going to dispossess black people who today have land. We are going to dispossess a black farmer somewhere in Makado, somewhere in KZN, or somewhere else. We are also going to dispossess black people who have got houses today in the urban areas. What will government do with an individual's house? Government is so we can't nationalize houses of people. We are very clear that this process of expropriation without compensation, you'll remember the 1913 Land Act dispossessed black people and not allowed them to own land in the 87% of the land. So since 1994, we've now redistributed a particular percentage, and what is remaining now, which is still in the hands of white South Africans, is 72, including 72%. So we are going to use the Expropriation Act to transform that 72%. We want to transform it to reflect the demographics of this country. You can, if you like, you can call it land affirmative action. To transform that 72% so that we transfer the land to the majority of the dispossessed. So that it's clear that It's not like the ANC now that it wants is agreeing to this explicit thing. We are saying now we must nationalize all the land. I think the ANC has studied the issue of the nationalization of the land in many countries, including the China that they like to pose about. What makes China tick in this regard? The banks and the financial sector in China is also owned by the state. So if you own the land, the state is able to help you. We are in the process of dealing with the banks and also being able to start a state-owned banks that will assist us with that at this stage. But if we do it today, we will then fund this process now because we don't have that instrument at this stage, which we are still going to build. But also, China also put measures that give security of tenure and clarity to that. It's a one-party state which gives certainty, political certainty, that tomorrow there will be no one who will wake up and say we are now taking away the lease. So when you compare China, you must compare it also with its political environment. Our political environment is different from the one of China. It's a multi-party democracy. And that is the other myth which we want to deal with is the fact that if we wake up tomorrow and say the state has nationalized all the land, it is now under the hands of states, therefore all South Africans will now be having land. It is not true. There will still be a need for legislation, how you are going to distribute, how you are going to do it, and it also does not mean that everyone will walk into a land. So it is also not going to be free. I think that is the other myth that I need to clarify. That position is not free. If we can wake up today as government and say we're nationalizing all South African land, we're now putting it under the hand of the state, it is not true that it will be free. If that thing is taken to the Constitutional Court, it will be found to be unjust and unequitable. And the state will have to pay billions of rents. The state does not have such billions of rents. So that position is not true that it's a free position. It's not going to be free if we just wake up and say we're nationalizing everything. It will also does not mean that all South Africans will wake up the following day with the land. But the other question which we just wanted to clarify, and I think the SG in his statement was very clear, is that the Lekgotla focus that young people in this country must find ways of employment, and the ANC must stimulate the economy to enable young people to enter the job market. And in this regard, the Lekgotla was anonymous about the scrapping of entry-level experience, even in government, and we also call upon the private sector to do the same, that for entry-level jobs, you can't expect a young person who has just graduated from Vents to have experience. So entry-level jobs must allow everyone without any experience. The entry-level jobs must scrap the issue of experience. And government is going to start to do that. I think this Lekgotla will be more explicit and clear how that is going to be done. So we also call the private sector to do the same, so that our young people must be able to enter the job market with ease and gain experience and so forth, because we have seen that the internship program is not sufficient. So in terms of the forms of ownership, the statement was clear that we are retaining the current forms of tenure. The state will own land for its use and also to lease or whatever that it can do. Private individuals will still have their title deeds. Families will still own land. Communal associations and cooperatives can still own land as communal associations. What we want to do with the communal land is to give security of tenure to the people in rural areas. So we are also going to be clear as time goes on how we're going to do that in terms of the security of tenure. Thank you very much, Comrade SG, for allowing me to appear here with my suit. Thank you.
I'm sure we have covered almost all the questions. You can see that we have committed ourselves at the ANC to the speedy, radical socio-economic transformation on the issue of land. One issue we have not emphasized that much, I think, is the issue of national health insurance. It's one of the issues. We have issue of education. So we are implementing. And I think one of the questions you posed was why President? Remember, the President is the leader of the African National Congress. And the President does, from time to time, opens our Lekgotlas in terms of political overview, be it the National Executive Committee, meetings, a political overview and close. And at critical moments, we feel that before we give any content and details to issues, we collectively agree that it will be proper for the leader of the ANC to pronounce on key decisions we have actually taken. That's package on the issue of economy stimulus and the issue of the land. We felt very strong that the voice of the president must be very clear, so that today at this press conference we give details and content to what the president has said, because this is the president of the ANC before he becomes the president of the country. And we wanted the president to give a very clear message and the line of march. So all of us will be marching, but the president considered all the public hearings as they are coming towards the end. And I think the inputs from the public resonate with what the ANC position is. And I'm sure we have covered all your questions. Oh, you still have questions? Okay.
Okay. We had expected that we'll take only that first round because no, you can put your hands down. We are supposed to receive a memorandum from young women now at 1 o'clock. So we may have to agree to close it here and then engage with yourself, because we're going to have to receive the memorandum, unfortunately, at 1 o'clock. You can come and join us, and then we can still take those questions there. So I mean, yes, that's fine. We will take 3 hands, but I thought that will incentivize you. When you attend the march, you will then get an incentive to ask more after the march. Okay. No, that's fine. We'll take 4 hands. That's fine. Kanita 702, Mahlatsi, Hajra, Muntlenyani. Oh, no, let's take the ones who didn't ask. Oh, okay. Samkelo. Yes. You must tell me your name, so next time I call you by name. Beard, okay. No, that's fine. And Debu. Okay. Brief questions, colleagues.
Thank you very much. My question, Mr. Ramaphosa, is, are you saying that the ANC, you just really need a really concise summary, as the ANC saw what people had to say at the land hearings and therefore decided not to be left behind and going in on that, and now the ANC will now still go back and then still have to discuss what the amendment will be. You can't say what the amendment will actually be. That's the first question. The second question, you say that there needs to be monitoring. Effectively, that's your portfolio in government. So is there going to be a change? Are you going to get a bigger ministry? Is there going to be an overhaul of your department? The third question is monitoring of SOEs. That's the jobs of principal ministries, public enterprise. That's why public enterprise exists. So when you look at the overhaul of the state, most of you have raised the overhaul of the state as the way to move the country forward. Is the ANC going to participate at all in that process led by Minister Dodro's department? Is there going to be any public input in that process? And what are the timelines? What are the timelines to the land amendment, and what are the timelines to building this capacity in the state? Thank you very much.
Okay, Mahlatsi.
Okay, thank you very much. I think just to add, I mean, there's so many of you. This is a real opportunity to get to pose questions. So thank you for granting us your time. I think on the land issue, it's 7 months down the line. I think people wanted clarity on if the constitution is amended, what will then happen? I think that people have given you enough time to process this, and that's why we're now looking for specifics so that we move on from beyond the resolution of December.
Yeah.
I think that's where the country is, and I think there's disappointment that there aren't any specifics. But thanks to Ronald for clarifying on who actually owned the land. My two questions. There's been this ferocious attacks on IPPs. I just want to get an understanding from the ANC. What is your position on it? And number two, we saw the attack by EFF leader Julius Malema on Patrice Motsepe, accusing him of being the new version of state capture. What is your response to that?
Okay, Hajra.
Hajra from Power 987. It's lovely to have all of you in the room. Thank you for the additional questions for me. On the issue of land, it could be argued that the ANC wants to be seen on the right side of history. But it could also be equally argued that the ANC